I'm waiting for you to talk all about your favorite match that came up next after old Swerve and Santo. I know this was your favorite match, wasn't it?
Which match is that?
Why, for the women's championship, Candice LeRae and Io Shirai. Io's your girl.
I think Io is very good. I'm not a big Candice LeRae fan, and wouldn't you know it, I hadn't eaten yet, and it was dinner time. So you want to guess what I did?
You could have at least, said power failure. Or, we had to take the dog to the emergency vet or something.
No, I had to go down and have some flank steak in the kitchen.
Well, cover your flank. All right. Well, I don't know who won, and I don't care. I wrote one word. Seriously? We get to the main event, and actually we get to the only event. We get to the reason to have watched this program. For the NXT title, Kyle O'Reilly challenging Finn Balor. Holy mackerel. A wrestling match actually broke out between two professionals in the midst of all of this falderall and all these shenanigans. This was perfect. This was really this was the best match. Well, obviously of this show, but also between Roman Reigns and Jey Uso, which we'll talk about here in a few minutes. That was an angle that was done as a match. This was a match that had a purpose. So this was better I think Reigns and Uso was better for what they wanted to do in terms of the match wasn't as good as this match, but what they did was big time and was better than the point of this, but this was a better match. Does that make sense? Did you understand what I just said?
I think so. It was hard to understand. It was a meandering comment.
Well, yeah, okay, see, you're going to get me back for beating around the bush. What I'm trying to say is with Roman Reigns, they did basically a match-long angle. It was not necessarily to elevate Jey Uso as a single, although that may happen as a byproduct, but it was to make Roman Reigns a disgusting, despicable heel. And they never expected the match the match fulfilled exactly that purpose. It wasn't supposed to be the main event of Starrcade 86. This match was better as a match, and it served the purpose of not necessarily elevating Kyle O'Reilly. He's already been a top guy, but of switching Kyle babyface. But I give Balor and O'Reilly the athletic performance and the match performance, and they did this perfectly also. And what a psychologist Balor is, because he was leading this thing. But I thought that for impact on business going forward, they made a bigger statement with Reigns and Uso. Anyway, I will explain later, but I digress onto this match. Balor looks like a handsome Dynamite Kid with no bad habits. You know, he's in that fucking insane physical condition. He just, you can tell that he's not necessarily a complete asshole like Dynamite was. And O'Reilly, from the time he came out, he's got personality. He's got swagger. He's got something. He's not fucking huge. Neither one of these guys is huge, but Balor's ripped. Kyle's not ripped, and he's never going to be ripped because he doesn't have the genetics or a physique to be ripped. But you can tell he's trained, and he's tall enough, and he's got the style that works for him to make him competitive. And finally, we saw a wrestling match where they didn't just start doing the trained moves. They took their time. They felt each other out. They did the mat wrestling. It was nice and tight. The whole feeling of the way they approached this match was different than everything else from the start of it. And their styles fit here also. And they were a good choice for opponents because Balor's a great technician. And even though his European influence kind of fits good with Kyle's MMA training and the BJJ, the jiu-jitsu, and etc. They won't say MMA or UFC on WWE, will they? They'll always say jiu-jitsu or martial arts or something. But they fit well because they're both the same style of, you don't have an Abdullah the Butcher, a wild, crazy gimmick here, or you don't have a a pure worker like a Jerry Lawler. You don't even have a brawler like a Terry Funk. You have athletic guys that can do the modern take on old-fashioned scientific wrestling, as they used to call it. This was modern scientific wrestling. Remember, at the start, especially, until Finn started swaying the people into Kyle's corner. When they would have, in the 70s and 80s, matches between baby faces, they would call them scientific matches. And they would be clean, and nobody would break the rules, and they'd break their holes on the ropes or whatever, and they'd wrestle hard, but it would be, nobody would break a rule. Scientific wrestling. That's what this is, the modern version of that. Nobody, I don't think, in the business today, tell me if you can think of anybody. Nobody in the business today can do an old school, old-fashioned territory pro wrestling babyface and heel grudge match, double juice fucking brawl, people jumping up and down and the goddamn shit. You convince these people want to kill each other. I don't think anybody can do that in the business anymore. Because they don't get any practice at it. They can't do it realistically, that is. There's no practice. They don't do them anymore. But guys like this at this level have improved the scientific match even better than it was in those days. That's a compliment you don't often hear me say. Finn Balor's a machine, and he built it to where O'Reilly was more and more of a threat as time went on. Because at first it was like, okay, he was the fucking old pro and he was taking Kyle to school, but then all of a sudden it's a little tougher to stay on top of him. I love O'Reilly's, that cartwheel butterfly suplex. Did you see that?
Yeah.
He's been doing that since the Ring of Honor days, and I don't know how he doesn't either bust his face or break his elbows. But then halfway through or more, Finn Balor started opening up more as a heel. When he started stomping the shit out of his midsection, when Kyle sold that spin kick really good, and he started working the gut. And then Finn turns it up. He's more aggressive. He's starting to disregard the referee. He's really being vicious. And O'Reilly is starting to sell not as a heel, where the heel sells with bigger bumps and shocked face, but a baby face sells realistically and in pain. And you can see it on his face, and he was gasping for breath. That's where Kyle's starting to get sympathy. And now you want to see the underdog start to come back. You always want to see the underdog come back. This is where these guys, that's what they call telling a story. It's not these goddamn goofy outlaw mud show indie fucks with their, well, we'll call back with this Japanese move to that match that was in the Korakuen Hall in 19 whatever the fuck. They're telling a story that everybody can understand. O'Reilly's been a heel, but he's been in a group of late that has had more support from the fans, especially with Adam Cole. But now with Finn Balor, he's been a baby face in the past, but he's the champion, and he wants more than anything to retain the title. So he has to switch as somewhat of a heel. He's still not goddamn pulling out a fucking wedge like Ron Wright or a chisel and busting a guy open or using a chain, but he's being vicious and he's pressing the rules. And the sympathy and the underdog status is switching to O'Reilly. And then O'Reilly gets the bloody mouth, which that helped, and he's fighting out of the sharpshooter, selling like crazy with the fucking blood coming out of his mouth. And just when the announcers are wondering if the referee's going to stop it, that's when O'Reilly starts fighting back. And if they'd had fans in the building, they would have been fucking jumping up and down. Because they had taken their time and Kyle had sold long enough to where it's like, okay, maybe the referee's going to have to make a call here. The title's on the line. We know he wants to let him play. Balor didn't rush the heat. He built the sympathy. And then in O'Reilly's comeback, he didn't go from zero to hero instantly. He's just got the shit kicked out of him. So he starts fighting back, but you see in his body language, in his facial expression, he's still registering and selling the effects of what's been done to him previously. He didn't just suddenly start doing all his moves as fresh as a daisy without acknowledging what had happened to him. And then when O'Reilly kicked out of the 1916, I'm sure that's a year in Irish, or is he Irish or Scottish?
I thought
Devitt.
Irish.
Prince Devitt. Okay, I'm sure it's Irish history. I don't know offhand, but he names his 1916 finish, but O'Reilly kicks out of it, and it means something. Because most of the time, people don't kick out of Balor's shit. I wanted Prince Devitt, I've talked about this, in Ring of Honor in 2010. I would have liked to have had, we never actually made an offer because, goddamn it, as Sinclair took ownership, I thought we were going to get a bunch of shit, and we couldn't even get a camera, so we weren't going to be able to import a guy from all the way from Europe and pay him what he would have wanted to come. But I was a fan of his then, and he's gotten better without seeming like he's aged that much. He's gotten bigger and he's gotten better, but he still looks fantastic. And this was like, you mentioned before, the Ring of Honor style they're doing now. This was like a high-level Ring of Honor match from 2010 or 2011 when we had Davey Richards, Tyler Black, Roderick Strong, Aries, the little prick was good, just insufferable. Eddie Edwards, those guys that were doing this really hard-hitting athletic shit at a high level. This was, to me, that level of match. Anyway, by the closing moments, O'Reilly's the one who has Finn Balor in trouble. And Balor's desperate, and he's in a leg lock, and he got a rope break, and that was a big deal because it showed that Finn Balor had to get to the ropes to prevent himself from losing the championship to Kyle O'Reilly. And right there, and then boom. And then finally, moments later, O'Reilly's worked the leg. He's tried to get the submission, blah, 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 but they're down, and Balor gets his double stomp off the top just once that nobody ever kicks out of, and they shouldn't. I would be scared to fucking death to be laying there because it looks very good. 1, 2, 3. Because he hit his finish. 30 minutes or thereabouts flew by because you were invested in what was going on. You weren't just watching ridiculous moves back and forth with no meaning. Everything looked good. The psychology was there. It was a phenomenal match. That was the only reason to watch the show. If I'd have started at the start of this match, I'd have been a happy man.
What'd you think of the post-match angle?
What the fuck did they do?
Did I Adam Cole.
I missed it?
Oh, how did you miss that?
I don't know. I figure, well, fuck, they're done. And it got, what? The phone rang. What did they do?
That Ridge Holland guy came out through the fan area with Adam Cole just knocked out, unconscious over his shoulder, and just dumped him at ringside. And then Roddy and Fish came out and, asked for help. And that's how the show ended, with Ridge Holland apparently at some point knocking out Adam Cole and just dropping him at ringside.
All right, well, I'm glad I didn't see that then. Because I remember the match was over. It looked like, because I was watching on the network, and with the counter, there was like a minute and a half left. I figured they're going into the fucking replays, and that's when the phone rang. And I just clicked it off. But I'm glad I did, because how many times we just watch 2 shows a week, basically. How many times in the last 2 months have we seen somebody carry a fucking unconscious body out that they've attacked and kidnapped, and they've either dump them out at the ringside or dump them in a trunk of a car or dump them somewhere? How many times?
It's been a few, and it's actually the second time we've seen an unconscious Adam Cole in the last month and a half, 2 months.
So they can't leave well enough alone. They had a phenomenal match with a perfect result where they got Kyle O'Reilly over as a babyface and a top single in losing in an incredible athletic display. And then they bring in the fucking horse shit that nobody believes and make Adam Cole look like a dumb fuck and make everybody involved in this that's trying to put it over like it's real look like a dumb shit, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, there you have it, folks. There was TakeOver. Nobody can leave well enough alone. Nobody can leave well enough alone.